Well, hello again, precious friends. Thank you for joining me once again in Chef Patty's Kitchen on the Carnivore Hippie channel. Today we're going to do another one in my series of kitchen techniques and knife work, just to broaden your repertoire of things that you can do in the kitchen. And today we're going to do something really unusual. I'm going to show you how to make ground meat or mince without a food grinder, and you can do it with either a food processor or a chopper, or you can actually do it by hand, and it's really a lot easier than you probably suspect that it is. But anytime you need a small amount of ground meat, you don't have to run out to the store and look for whatever kind of ground meat you want to buy. You can just take whatever meat it is you have that you need minced up, and you can do it yourself. Anything from fish and shrimp to chicken, pork, beef, anything you can do. So if you need some minced emu for whatever reason, you can just, and you have a piece of emu and you want to make an emu burger, you can do it by yourself with nothing more than your own know-how and your own hands and muscles. And that is what makes you a truly powerful cook. Okay, let's get started. So friends, we're going to begin with mincing in the food processor. I have here a couple of chicken breasts, and they've been in the freezer for about an hour, and they're pretty firm. You can tell that they are at least semi-frozen. And each chicken breast, you'll see, has a fat end and a narrow end. So the fat end's called the bulb, and the thinner end is called the tail. And we're going to cut the tails off, just about like that. And we're going to cut this little flappy bit off as well. Save that. And we're going to save these two big pieces. I'll get this other flappy bit too. And we're going to save these big pieces for another application. So we're going to set those aside. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut these pieces into strips first. So we're going to dice them. So to dice strips first, set out all your strips, go in the same direction. And that way you can just cut all just straight across them into your dice. A big pile like this is sometimes difficult to manage, hold on to. So if you want to, you can just separate it out into several different stacks and cut it that way. Remember to keep your fingers bent under. Practice that grip, friends. It will really help your knife skills. And we're going to get this finished chopping this up here. So we'll just finish this up. There we have it. Now you can see that this meat is still semi-frozen. If you look at the pieces, you can tell that they're really firm. You want this to be very cold and very firm for this. Oops. You can see, pretty firm. Semi-frozen is okay. Hard frozen is not. And so we're going to start with the machine on. And we're going to put about 8 ounces at a time. dropping it in while the machine is running. So 8 ounces is about half what I have in the bowl there. We'll leave the other half. You can't do too much at one time or it won't grind evenly. So once it balls up into a ball, just reach in, go through it a little bit and make sure there aren't any super big chunks left, and to loosen up the mass a little bit. And then pulse 5 or 6 more times until it comes back into a ball. And it's done. And we can take the first batch out. Here we go. Now you don't need to clean the processor. And repeat with the second batch. Oops, I got a little bit stuck in the feed tube. There we go. Spread it out again. Scrape it down. Loosen up the mass. And pulse. 5 or 6 times, and it's done. And there you have it. It's a lot of effort, yeah, but it's a lot less effort than like driving down to the store for just half a pound of ground meat. So now I'm going to show you the really old school way. We had to learn this in cooking school. We had a really old school instructor who was trained in France and in Belgium. And during a time, gosh, he probably was in the 50s in the restaurant industry when he started out. And yeah, everybody in my class had to learn how to do this. Not that we did it very often, but there are some reasons that we might want to do it this way on occasion. And we'll go into that in a minute. But here we go. This is not because I expect you guys to do this, but it's kind of fun to learn about it. And it's really neat to have these old-fashioned, really retro techniques under your belt so you can whip them out every once in a while and impress people. Okay, here we have about another pound of chicken meat. This is still very cold, but it's not frozen. You don't want it that cold for this process. You can see it's ordinary chicken texture, not partially frozen. So we're going to start with a handful or so. It's probably about 4 ounces of the dice. I'm just going to run the knife through it to get it started. I should have honed my knife before I started, but now that it's covered in chicken meat, it's a little late. Yeah, start with sharp knife, friends. And we're going to gather it up again and run it through one more time. And this right here would correspond to like a super coarse grind. And you could actually stop there and it would make a perfectly good chicken burger. But I'm going to show you the really old school fun part. And once you get it down to this texture, you need 2 knives for this. Just start wailing on it. This is the fun part. And the chicken meat or any other kind of meat will start sticking to the knife. So what you do for that is you just wet the knife, get yourself a container of warm water, as you see, and just wet the knife and just keep going. Wet the knife in between as soon as the meat starts sticking to the knife. And then and then you can go at it with both knives. This part's actually pretty fun. Just make sure you don't bang your knives together. I don't expect you to go this fast, obviously. I've speeded up the recording. And once you get it as fine as you want to, just go through it with, smear it around a little bit, check for big chunks, and there you go. And that's how they do it. And we're gonna get another handful. And that's probably about another 4 ounces. And just repeat the process. So, friends, here I have the 2 bowls of mince. And this one is the one that we minced with the 2 knives by hand. And this is the one that we did in the food processor. Now, you may be able to see that the one from the food processor is much more finely minced, and it's relatively pasty, which is not necessarily a bad thing. When you're making something like meat-filled dumplings or something like that, you might want it really finely chopped like this because it helps to integrate other ingredients and seasonings into the meat. And you might want this for making some kind of sausage as well, because that makes a very different texture of sausage that you might be interested in. And this one you can actually see the little teeny tiny chunks of meat. There's still definition in it. And there are, to this day, very old school chefs who, if they're making, say, what they say, a chopped steak or something like that, where they want the more toothsome texture, there are some, like I said, old school chefs who would still insist on doing the meat this way because it's an entirely, well, not entirely, but it's a very different texture than running it through the food processor or even a food grinder. And this kind of texture is, some people find very, very satisfying on the palate. And in fact, there are Chinese chefs, as a matter of fact, who will insist upon doing ground meat this way as a mince because they believe that this kind of meat, the muscle fibers have been broken down too much, and the idea is that it lets the intrinsic goodness leak out of the meat. That's a very Asian sort of a perception. But anyway, I have known of chefs who, especially Chinese chefs, who insisted on all of their ground meat being done this way. Can you imagine trying to do ground meat that way for a restaurant service? And yet for about 100 years, during the time when restaurant service was a big thing, and before the advent of electrical power and those kinds of devices became common, this was the way they did it, friends. I'm serious. It was nuts. And they all did it. It was accepted. And you would have like people who cooked for rich individuals. This was the way that they did ground meat or chopped meat. This is why the Brits call it mince and not ground meat, because it's left over from this process. Anyway, I just thought that would be fun for you guys to see. And now you have those techniques down under your belt. You can practice those. And like I said, it's kind of fun to whip them out every now and then. And get the eye goggle. So anyway, thanks for joining me once again. Join me over on Facebook. Thanks for watching. I bid you peace, love, and meat, and keep learning. Bye.